All right, ladies and gentlemen. So this is lecture 3D. It was initially entitled Our Foreign Policy or Looking at Foreign Policy, but make it a little broader for us since we didn't get to cover everything we needed to about Washington domestically. So it's Washington and Adams presidency, and it's the foundation of our nation. And a lot of things that's going to happen are going to be established now. There's going to be the two party system, okay, which is going to be established at this time. And although not named the same thing, this is where it comes from. You're going to get some presidents by the presidents that aren't going to happen, especially with Washington. And then we're going to start seeing our foreign policy start evolving and what our foreign policy should be, especially as a young nation and if we want to grow. And so those are the things we're going to look at in this lecture. Okay, so with Washington, he'll set some precedents for the presidency. Okay, and the first couple of things is he's the only and first, I guess, first and only president elected unanimously by the Electoral College. And we'll dive into the Electoral College as we get closer to the election, and you people will get a vote, actually. We'll look at that. So one of the first things he does is he sets his cabinet. And the cabinet at first was three people. You had Jefferson as the Secretary of State. You had Hamilton as the Secretary of Treasury. You had Henry Knox as the Secretary of War. And then with the Judiciary Act of 1789, you also get the Attorney General, which will be Edmund Randolph. And then the Secretary of War, I already said that was Henry Knox. Okay, so you get those four. With that today, and just looking, I seried it up. Okay, the president, according to Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution, the cabinet's role is to advise the president on any subject he may require relating to the duties of each member's respective office. Today, President Donald J. Trump's cabinet includes Vice President Mike Pence and the heads of 15 executive departments: agriculture, commerce, defense, education, energy, health and human services, homeland security, housing and urban development, interior, labor, state, transportation, treasury, and veterans affairs, and the attorney general. Additionally, the cabinet includes the White House Chief of Staff and heads of the Environmental Protection Agency, Office of Management and Budget, United States Trade Representative, Central Intelligence Agency, Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and Small Business Administration. Whoa, so it has grown a lot, people. Okay, so you get that. But the cabinet is so important for Washington is because it's going to sow the seed for our initial two parties between Jefferson and Hamilton. Also, by the way, you get the Bill of Rights, first 10 amendments. Okay, should probably know those. We've gone over them. Okay, and so we have those, and the Judiciary Act of 1789 gives us our Supreme Court with the head John Jay. There's 6 judges in that. Also gives our federal and our circuit courts of appeals throughout the nation, and the ability to who gets to appoint those judges to office. Okay, so we get our battle between Hamilton and Jefferson. And just to dive into their beliefs a little bit more, Hamilton believed that government was by the upper class. They were more educated. They had more time to govern. They also had the power and the money and means to do so. And this, he distrusted the common man or mobocracy, did not like that, supported a strong central government, almost king-like. Federal government should foster business and not interfere with that. You kind of see that with the tariffs he wants to impose, because most people who were Federalists were from the North, and these included merchants, manufacturers, and shippers. And they were pro-business because that is they did a lot of trade with Britain, and it was very similar to those manufacturers, merchants, and shippers. Remember, Britain was the first to industrialize, if you remember that from modern world history. Jefferson, on the other hand, advocated the rule of the people, government for the people. However, at this time, it was still the well-educated, and usually the well-educated had money. So there's a little contradiction there that we're going to see until we get Andrew Jackson. Okay, this appealed to the middle class and the underprivileged, primary agrarian. Remember, they're more states' rights, and they believed that the best government was the one that governed least, and they'll become known as the Democratic Republicans. They thought national debt was a curse, which meant that Hamilton's financial plan was bad, and they were majority pro-French. as they were agrarian, which was a majority of the United States at this time. Okay, and with this, let's just review. Hamilton came up with this plan. Okay, it was a financial plan, 5 things. They wanted to basically give the money out to those who had bonds from the American Revolutionary War at that price, which caused some problems because speculators got a hold of this and basically went out and bought these from poor farmers for a cheaper price and then got more money. So they made a bunch off this, but per whatever price they bought them. He also said that we need to do bonds and we have to get this debt. We all assume all state debts. Some states had already paid off their debt, meaning the South, because they're agrarian, they don't believe in debt. They go with Jefferson, get rid of it as fast as possible. And so they're mad that the northern states' debt, they're going to get taxed for in the South. Okay, that was number 2. Number 3, make a national bank. Okay, it's a diuretic. Okay, it will flow money. Tax money can go in there. They can print currency. There's going to be tons of different currencies by states because they can still do that for a long time, and that's a good thing. It's going to help the economy out. Number 4 is an excess tax on goods such as whiskey. That's how we get the Whiskey Rebellion that is put down by George Washington. I believe the year was 1794. With that, okay, and so farmers in Pennsylvania don't want to pay the tax. They rebel, and Washington drives out with his army and basically puts it down. Hamilton's there as well as kind of his right-hand man back to the glory days of the American Revolution. And number 5 is the tariffs on imports, okay, trying to help manufacturing a little bit more. But as we saw with what President Trump did by raising taxes on imports, the goods that get hurt the most are agricultural goods that are going to other nations, okay, and so that's where the other side gets pretty angry with this. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so you got the Hamilton and his Federalists, and you get Jefferson and the soon-to-be Democratic Republicans, and one of the most significant events that will start to split these two groups even more is the French Revolution. Now, at first, not a huge deal because it really was France. They beat Prussia and Austria. It stays there, but then you get the Reign of Terror. You get Marie Antoinette, King Louis XVI getting their heads chopped off by the beautiful guillotine. And then it becomes more of a world war. And it becomes an issue when Britain enters the war. And so Washington has to make a decision. Obviously, Jefferson supports the French. That we gave an agreement that will help them out whenever they need it. You have Hamilton, who is very pro-British. He sees how their industrialization, how their economy works, is all for it. He also knows that trade with them is very important. And so now you have this issue of which side to take. Washington is going to proclaim neutrality in 1793. The big thing about this is he says, don't take a side to everyone and American citizens. Okay. Good thing about this is that if we were to choose a side, especially if we chose the French side, trade would have been cut off and we wouldn't be able to trade with France. And so this helped them that we didn't choose a side, and they really never asked us to for us to keep our end of the bargain after the American Revolution, so it was okay. One of the interesting things that does happen is called the Citizen-Jeanette affair, and I totally butchered that. Basically, this privateer comes across, is asking for investors to help basically arm ships, French transportation to fight in the war, and he really thinks that what Washington did with this proclamation of neutrality proclamation, it wasn't what the people wanted. And he finds out that Washington's not going to mess with it, and Washington kicks him out. And so that was an interesting time in American history. But we take this position, neutral, okay? And you can see Washington, and you read about it in his farewell address. There's really 3 things that he wants. He doesn't want political parties. President should end after 2 years, and everyone will keep that without it being in the Constitution until it has to be in the Constitution after FDR. And stay neutral. We're not ready to fight a war against these powerhouses, and we'll learn the hard way in 1812. Okay, just interesting. We talked about Cabinet Battle number one in Hamilton. Cabinet Battle number two is all about this. This was the words from Washington before he starts the battle. Listen to this one, it's also a good one. So, Cabinet Battle number two is about should we stay neutral? Should we join with the British, which Hamilton wanted, or should we join with the French with what Jefferson wanted? Again, one of the big issues that really brought about the Democratic Republican Party was Jay's Treaty. Jay's Treaty uh, did very little to nothing for the United States. We didn't gain very much, and actually, Britain had their upper hand. And it was because, and this is one of, I think, the black eyes of Hamilton's history is the Jay's Treaty. Okay, Jay's Treaty, the British were still in the western lands. They had forts they said they were going to get out of after the agreement in 1783, after the American Revolution. They were impressing sailors, meaning taking over American ships, making those people on those ships be sailors for the Britain fleet. And these things really infuriated the United States of America, but really didn't want to go to war. We got most of our customs or our tariffs, our import taxes that we had got through Hamilton's financial plan from Britain, about 75%. So this would really hurt. So the Federalists in Hamilton didn't want to go to war with British. Jefferson and the soon-to-be Democratic Republicans wanted to put basically a closed trade or a tax or stop trading with Britain. Wasn't going to really happen. And so we get Jay's Treaty. We send John Jay over there trying to fight for our ships that were being impressed to get them out of our territory. And Hamilton basically gives the British our game plan. Okay, it would be like any game, and we just told the other team what we were going to do. So it's really going to hurt them. And so with that, John Jay's Treaty comes back, and it basically says the British will get out of that northern soil that they promised to in 1783, that they will stop impressing ships right now, and that they will repay the damages to mostly northern businesses that those ships impressed in the West Indies, what happened to them. Okay, and remember, they're fighting in the French Revolution. They're fighting France right now. It's becoming a world war. We're going to get into Napoleonic Wars here in a little bit. But British will pay for the damages. They also say, though, that later down the road, they might still impress American citizens, which they do leading to the War of 1812. So they put that in there saying, hey, listen, we still might do this. And then the last thing is they make John Jay agree to pay back revolutionary debt to the British. Okay? Debt that was there before the American Revolution. We now have to pay that back. This is going to infuriate Thomas Jefferson and those Democratic Republicans. Not only are the northern businesses going to be refunded for all the damage to their ships from impressment, but now they're going to be taxed for a bunch of stuff that happened before the Revolutionary War, and it's just not good. Washington reluctantly signs this, though, because he knows it's better than going to war with the British again. We're just not ready, and we can't go to war. We're going to get totally destroyed, and so he signs this reluctantly, but he sees the bigger picture of it. But you need to know this is going to be the big event that's going to split Federalists and Democratic Republicans, okay? It's all over the French and British issue. Rather quickly, a more successful treaty is Pinckney's Treaty. This will allow us, because Spain is on the downward or the decline as an empire, and they want to kind of mend or make sure our relationship with them is good. And so they're going to pass this. Basically, we're going to gain a little land, and the border is now going to become the 31st parallel. And a big thing, because of the Mississippi River, is that we'll be able to use the port of New Orleans, and we'll also get a deposit deposit goods. So things that are coming down, we actually can and store there, and that can become kind of another hub for us, which is huge for the Northwest territories. Okay, so we get the Adams presidency. Before we dive into this, you must understand Washington's farewell address. Okay, big things that come out of that, and you read it. The big things. Political parties are terrible. He saw what they did, especially with Jay's Treaty. Okay, he became labeled as a Federalist once he signed that, and so he loses Thomas Jefferson. He also loses those Democratic Republicans that are following him. So we're starting to see that split. Okay, remember that Jefferson resigned as Secretary of State to run against Adams. Okay, so we get that split. Farewell address, no political parties. We're going to stay neutral, and this is going to lead us to a policy of isolationism for about the next 100 years. Okay. Also, he's going to set the precedent for presidents to step down after 2 years. However, there were a ton of people that wanted him to run again, and I believe he could run until he died. I really, truly believe, because just how much he put the country before himself. But he was tired, he was weary, he was over it. Peace out. I'm going home. Okay, and so we get him stepping down, and we get Adams showing up. Okay, Adams becomes president. The big things you need to know about him, because there's not much more, are what happens with France. It really truly is all about that, and his response to that on the home front. So it's going to start with our relationship with France. Okay, so with the French, they are absolutely infuriated with Jay's Treaty. Okay, it does nothing. It shows weak policy. We don't have a backbone. We allow basically the British to walk all over us, and it also doesn't help the French at all. And so there's a lot of tension there, and it's going to be escalated with what was called the XYZ affair. Okay, in 1797. We sent over a group, an envoy, including John Marshall, which will be important when we get to the Supreme Court at the end of Adams' presidency in the next unit. But we send over this envoy to negotiate, to talk about this, because they are really angry. And so we're going to talk about it. And then there's these go-betweeners, and they'll be known as X, Y, and Z. So 3 individuals, they basically, hey, we're going to bribe you before you can even talk to us about peace. Okay, negotiations don't really even get rolling. They don't come back. This reaches or gets out into the media and the public. Federalists are going crazy. Let's go to war. Okay, we start getting ready for war. The Navy Department's made. We start building up our Navy. We're going to raise an army, which we want Washington to be general, but he's getting really old. So actually, Hamilton's kind of going to be the main man there, with Washington kind of guiding him a little bit. Never fully done, but we're going to build an army. And we're going to have this kind of quasi-war, especially at sea, especially in the West Indies. We're going to take a bunch of French ships. They're going to take a bunch of our sailors. We're going to stop trading with them. And this is going to go on until the Convention of 1800, where basically John Adams is going to go against his party. Remember, because he's a Federalist, okay? And we're not truly at parties. We're basically there. Let's say it. He's a Federalist, so he's pro-British, and he's going to give in to the French. He's going to kind of want peace, and so Federalists are not going to like this, and this is one reason he only gets one term. And so he negotiates peace with, now at this time, Napoleon. Now, he says this is his finest hour, and it really might be, because if he doesn't negotiate peace with France after this 2.5-3 year quasi-war, we might never have got the Louisiana Purchase. Napoleon might have not given us that. But in that negotiations, we basically end our alliance. France says that's okay. The U.S. says, hey, we'll pay our own damages to our ships, what happened during this time. And so kind of breaching the problem allowed for Jefferson to get the Louisiana Purchase. Okay, on the home front, we get, during this quasi-war, we get something called the Alien and Sedition Acts. This is so important, and the reaction by the Democratic Republicans. Okay, the Alien Sedition Acts, first the Alien Acts, was basically any foreigners, especially the French, who were agitating the public, could be shipped out. Okay, never really enforced. Citizen Jeanette kind of type people we're looking for, but that's it. The key one, though, is the Sedition Acts. Basically, you can't speak up against the government. What amendment does this go against? Oh, nice job. First Amendment. Okay, and so it is unconstitutional. But the Federalist Supreme Court won't act on this because there's this anti-French fever going through the country. We hate the French. This is for our country. Nationalism. Yeah. Okay, and so the Supreme Court doesn't move against this. However, the Democratic Republicans, especially James Madison, especially Thomas Jefferson, see this as stepping on our rights and the central government becoming way too strong. This is specifically for the Democratic Republicans, those who would speak up against going against the French and kind of supporting the British in ways here, okay? And so these come about. Now, why you need to know about the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions is that what these resolutions aim to was to say that states could nullify or basically say, we're not going to follow these. These don't work. We're going to nullify these laws because they are unconstitutional, giving states the right to do so. These won't pass in any other states, but nullification will be used later during Andrew Jackson time, and then more importantly, the South will use nullification to start the Civil War. And so that's why that's so important. So that really is Adams' presidency and wrapped up. Not a whole lot else happened with him, but those are the big things we need to know about that. His quasi-war, which was started because of the XYZ affair, but more importantly, we get the Alien and Sedition Acts, and they're stepping on constitutional rights. And then the Democratic Republicans, Jefferson and Madison basically saying, hey, that's unconstitutional. States should be able to nullify that, not getting enough support by other states. And they're not doing it to break up the Union. Okay, they're doing it to, in their minds, protect people's civil liberties. Okay, and so that's what happens during Adams' presidency. Not much, and we go from there. Until next time.